Hi, and welcome back to the Here Together podcast from the Philadelphia Orchestra and Kimmel Center, Inc. This is a space where we hope you'll find home in this art we all love. I'm your new host, Khadija Mbowe, and I describe myself as a sociocultural content creator, classically trained soprano, though I have been known to sing some jazz, and loving provocateur. And I'm here to facilitate some heartfelt, engaging, disruptive conversations with artists, activists, and everyone in between. That's you. That heavenly sound you heard in the intro was our guest today, esteemed soprano Cann Slack, giving the world premiere of Hannibal's Healing Tones with the Philadelphia Orchestra in 2019. I first met Cann in 2020 through the Banff Opera in the 21st Century program, a summer program that connects young artists with some pretty fantastic mentors. Cann, of course, being one of them. Now, because it was during peak pandemic isolation, we never got to meet in person. But as you'll see through this episode, we've managed to find a pretty good bond either way. I like to think of her as my rich auntie with a career and life that I aspire to. She travels the world performing in operas, giving recitals, and mentoring the next generation of singers. She's been the artistic advisor for Portland Opera. She was in the Tyler Perry movie for Colored Girls and has a bunch of her own interesting solo projects like Say Their Names and KikiKonversations. We'll get into those a bit later. Basically, this woman is booked and busy, but she always ends up home in Philadelphia, where she was born and raised, pause for laughter, and where she attended the Creative and Performing Arts High School, lovingly known as CAPA, at the same time as famous alumni Questlove and Black Thought of the Roots, and the members of Boyz II Men. Today, Cann balances her very glamorous career with a pretty regular home life. She lives with her 2 cats and her husband. And though you might expect that she'd end up with a fellow musician, his gift is in visual arts. But there's no question that these two are soulmates. They literally grew up together, became friends when they were 8 years old, and have still been together to this day. It's so adorable. And look, this episode, Cann and I are going to talk about some big topics: music, education, artistry, the state of the world. You know how this goes. So first, I thought it could be kind of cute to take a teensy moment to highlight their love story. Here we go. What do y'all do for fun, like human people?
We love wine tasting. We go to hip hop concerts, underground hip hop concerts a lot. We go to a lot of live music. My husband is a definite, as we call him, dirty backpacker.
That's what they call it, a dirty backpacker.
That's what I call them. Yeah, because they all look grungy and because it's not about the whole shiny. It's not the shiny hip hop call. It is like real grimy, kind of like the beats are grimy. Like everything is just pure essence of what hip hop is. It's like, spitting and freestyling and ciphering and you know what I mean? And I enjoy that because I'm still in music, I'm still doing it, but it's more of who I am, where I come from, the culture. And so that's something that we enjoy to do together. And then nobody cares that I fancy schmancy, whatever. I just go and I'm like everybody else and just spending time together. He's my best friend. He knows me better than anybody.
Oh. You come full circle too then, because you're still doing all the things. You have all this career, all this, but you're right back with your best friend since you were 8, listening to hip hop. Oh, it's so beautiful. I just got chills. That was so lovely.
Yes. I'm really lucky.
Walk me and those that don't know you through the initial timeline of you beginning music and going in through that. Okay. And then starting to find your own sort of voice as you got into classical music, if that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, I grew up in North Philly. I always call it the center of Philadelphia, the universe. All good things come from North Philly. So I grew up in a very supportive family. I never thought I'd be an
Mm.
opera singer. I played the violin in the fourth grade for like 3 or 4 months. I absolutely hated it. But again, like back in those days, all the schools had orchestra, string programs, choir, art, and I took all of them, and I always had this voice, this big kind of loud voice. But because I didn't grow up necessarily in a religious household, I didn't grow up like going to church every Sunday, singing in the choir. I didn't have that background because my parents were like much more liberal, that's a bad word now, but very open and free, and kind of like, you'll find your way, because they grew up in more strictly religious backgrounds and they didn't want me to have that kind of experience. So there was always like jazz, blues, R&B, hip hop. I grew up in the golden age of hip hop, like always music in my life. But I remember listening to like Beastie Boys and Straight Outta Compton and knowing every single word.
Straight out of Compton. Crazy.
Yes.
Name Ice Cube. Oh, I remember when I first.
My parents would just like close the door. I mean, this is like pre-Biggie, pre-Nas, and Nas is my favorite rapper or whatever. But like that's my background. So anyway, so I'm in the fourth grade and not really liking string. I wish somebody would have given me a cello. I think my life would have been different. But my music teacher, I could always count like solfeggio, recite, read music, and do all this. I had a great ear. And so he let me lead the Star Spangled Banner in the sixth grade because I had this big voice. And I still never think I would go into classical music or any kind of music at all, because I always wanted to be a veterinarian, because I love cats and dogs and pets and all that.
Yes, you have 2 cats. You do.
Always 2 in rotation. Like,
Really?
Oh yeah, when one goes on to glory, we get another one. So.
Oh, when one goes on to glory, I love that. Oh. But you wanted to be a veterinarian.
Yes, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and my father worked at University of Pennsylvania at the hospital in the security department, so I could go to UPenn for free, which is one of the leading veterinary medicine schools, and so I always had my idea that I was gonna go there. Until I got into the 7th grade, and my music teacher was like, Karen, you got to take this singing thing seriously. You have a beautiful voice. You have a great ear. And I was like, no, I'm not trying to sing, because singing was something that I just did because I loved it. And I wanted to be Whitney Houston and Anita Baker, growing up in that era of I listened to whatever my parents listened to, Motown. And so my voice wasn't like those beautiful artists, but I loved to like sing to the radio. And so anyway, she twisted my arm to audition for the Philadelphia High School for the Creative and Performing Arts, which is our big arts high school here. And I got in on the spot.
Come on, got in on the spot? Ooh.
Singing a Whitney Houston song, The Greatest Love of All. Like, I think every Black girl sang that.
Or hold on, let's clarify. Tried to sing that. So when you got into the high school, this performing arts high school, was it a lot of choir? Was it when you started to get introduced to classical music as well? Or is it still like, well, it's Questlove and Boyz II Men and all of them are here, so we're in the hallways singing a cappella and just harmonizing? Like,
no, well, it was that too. But Mr. David King, he was the man. He was the person that he would play opera every morning at 7:30. He would blast it. And like before we started class, I mean, Jesse Norman, Maria Callas, Franco Corelli, like all the greats. So my palette for opera singing was always very, very high, right? And when he played Maria Callas singing Costa Diva, I heard her and saw her, and I was like, oh my God, I want to be able to do that. And then what sealed the deal for me was him playing Jesse Norman singing Isolde, the Liebestod.
ooh, don't talk to me about Jesse Norman singing Liebestod, because I do not appreciate Wagner's anti-Semitism, and I know a lot of us don't.
Yes.
Hello, that's just facts.
Yes.
And I try not to indulge in him too much because of that, especially because I'm not in classical music, but that recording with Karajan doing the conducting, I can't not watch it.
I know. It's everything, and yeah, it's transformative. You're right. It's just, you're like, how is it possible that is happening, that moment? that two human, all the humans on the stage, everybody in the theater, because it's a whole experience. It's not just two people. It's not just a singer and a conductor. It is the entire orchestra. It is the audience. It is a participatory like art form in order to make it magical. You know, like I think that we don't talk about that enough, because we like to put people on God status and in the ivory tower, but that's a whole other conversation. Like,
we'll get to the parasocial. If we have time, we'll talk parasocial relationships. Yes. But you're in this school, you have this teacher introducing you to opera, all of this rich, luxurious, dramatic, expansive sound, especially for someone that's told your whole life, oh, you got a big voice, and then also someone who knows you have a big presence, like you just know that about yourself. Like, is that what drew you to it after a while? Or what was that initial, like, okay, I think if there was an inciting incident, let's say.
Yes, it was. Well, it was those two women. And then, you know, we were learning all the big choral pieces. Mr. King, we sang Brahms, Verdi, Mozart, Requiem. Like that was our education. Like he was taking all these kids who are from the inner city of Philadelphia and wherever you were a part of, you know, in the city. And most of us not having had the background of doing anything classical operatic. And he was training us in, you know, how to breathe, how to read music, you know, how to speak these languages, like all this stuff. Like he never was like, oh, you're a black kid from the inner city, you can't do it. No, the expectation that we had to be great. And so that was from day one. Like Mr. King didn't play around. And, you know, and also I think my class was the first year that Opera Company of Philadelphia it was called Opera Company of Philadelphia back then. Now it's Opera Philly. I was a part of the Sounds of Learning. My year was the first year that they opened up the dress rehearsals. Now it's standard. And the year that I did it, Denyce Graves was singing her Carmen. I think she might have been debuting the role or about to go and sing it at the Met or something like that. And I was 16 years old. And I said, I want to do that someday. So that was the moment for me that solidified, because I saw this beautiful black woman up there, title role, command the stage. I didn't understand, of course, because I didn't have the education to understand what I was witnessing, but I knew that I wanted to be able to do that someday.
Now, after a description like that, I couldn't not include a clip of Denyce Graves performing something from Bizet's Carmen. I'm not cruel. So here is Denyce Graves singing Habanera at the Richard Tucker 20th Anniversary Gala in 1996.
I always struggled with reading and math all the time. And not that I was ever diagnosed with any kind of like learning disability, because I was always really, always worked really hard, but I did have some learning challenges. So I didn't score always high on my tests because I had this thing, whatever this was. And I slightly dyslexic a little, because I always persevered and pushed through. Like if things were harder, I just studied a little bit more, never thinking that I actually really had some challenges. But I think it's important to speak about that because I have to learn these massive scores and memorize and do all of these things through whatever challenges that I have. Like I've been able to continue to do that. But again, I didn't score very high, so I didn't always get like all of the big scholarships and stuff. I always had the talent, the voice, but the other things, of course, they put more emphasis on. So I needed money to go back to school. And I auditioned for the Rosa Ponselle International Competition for the Vocal Arts, big competition back in the 90s. And I won $50,000. I won the competition and moved to New York to study privately. So that was really where I like got the real taste of what an opera career. And I was 18. Like, what the heck? Because they were kind of training me to be the next Rosa Ponselle. Ponselle made her big Metropolitan Opera debut at 21 in La Forza del Destino, which is a big girl role. Like that is, people don't do that anymore. That was a very early 1900 way of training of singers. We don't train singers that way anymore. You know, where you live with your maestro, you learn all your roles, or they put them in your throat. Like there's no time for that anymore. But so the way I was being trained and the repertoire that I was singing did not fit in with my age and what I should have been singing. And so I did know that part. And then when I got to Curtis Institute of Music, then that was where I learned, oh, you're not supposed to sing all these big, grand, operatic arias. Learn an art song.
Like that's a trap. I want to just quickly as a tangent. When you're a young singer that has a big voice, especially, I can only speak from my experience of being a Black singer with a bigger voice. Sometimes people get a little too excited about what you can do or what you're capable of doing before you even know. Like when I tell you I didn't start singing Mozart, I should have sang Mozart way earlier than I did. There was little bits here, but there weren't enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a real thing. I'm glad that you said that because they hear the color of the voice.
Yes.
And the size and weight of the voice, and then they go, "Oh, you should be singing Puccini and Verdi and what else?" Other stuff. It's like, no. That's the trappings of modern day, training. It's like, yeah, well, the voice probably will develop into that, but when I'm like 40, not when I'm 22 or 23, and again, the training of artists, how we train the artists in the 21st century for an old art form. How are we doing that?
Do you have any observations, any critiques, any suggestions?
I do. I think that I don't think we're always doing it well because, of course, profit is the gloomy cloud over the art form. It's that they have to get so many students into a school in order to pay for the education, for the functioning of the place, whatever that is. And so we're having quantity over quality. We're training so many people for a couple of spots. And they're returning out artists who are not all the way, are not giving all the attention that they need. It takes a long time to build a technique. It is tedious. It is every day. And that way, I will say that the system of educating artists needs to be blown up. Now, the industry is something different because if you blow it up, it's very difficult to try to build it back up. But the institution of how we train artists, absolutely blow up the curriculum and start over again because it ain't working.
Someone who came through that curriculum, I understand what you mean. Would you say that that's also why you've gotten more into, or have always been into, mentoring as well for other artists, especially like young Black artists that might be coming up that don't really know how to navigate the space necessarily?
Yes, absolutely. I am definitely, when I mentor, I leave from a place of what is it that I wish I had when I was that age. I want you all to be able to ask the questions because you are even more informed than I was because I started so early. I just started so young. Yeah, it is all very important to me. The mentorship, the keeping it real, being real, speaking about my own successes. And I don't want to say failures. That's not what I want to say. Or choices that I could have made and done differently, but because I didn't have someone to be able to bounce ideas off of, or to be too afraid or ashamed to express that I wanted a career more than what they had told me I should aspire to. Like, I that's how I mentor everybody, from those spaces of like, tell me what you want and we'll figure out how to make it work. And it doesn't have to look like the way that your teacher said. You know, I want to be able to blow up the idea that there's only one way to be successful. Like you have to sing at all the A houses, you have to sing it all with all the best orchestras and all the things. And that's the career is the only career that we acknowledge as having arrived. And I think we should be better than that. Like we should do better. We should be better. Yes, absolutely. Those careers are, it takes a lot to get there, right? It takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of commitment. But just because you don't have that doesn't mean that you lack anything. It's just the luck of the draw. And I think that we need to talk about those things more. It's like, again, like the whole idea of like that is a part of like the supremacy of the whole situation is that we only see the international as the career. Like, and I think we should do more. We should do better. We should be better. And also to fill a need, fill a void, a need. I don't want to be a mentor like everybody else. I want to be Karen Slack, mentor style. Nobody can do that except me. So I'm just gonna be me, and I'm gonna give it to you the way I feel like we've come up with together. And if it works, fine. If it doesn't, we'll figure something else out, or you can find another mentor. That's I'm never ashamed to be like, if this is not what you want, go find what you need.
That's fair. But I want to say then, speaking to that need, because I think about that a lot. Like, okay, even with my siblings, like my older siblings weren't there for me the way I needed someone. So I'm going to try that with my younger siblings. But going back to when you were 18, thought I forgot, but I didn't.
Love it.
What did you think that you needed more than anything when you were that age? You're 18, you win this big competition. And then I understand that your mom had passed away, but I don't know if it was before, it was around that time as well, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, my mom was sick the whole time I was in high school. And then I went to competition in 94. My mother passed away a year later. So, yeah.
So you're in this city where I'm assuming you don't know anyone.
No.
In this competition, you were just like, well, I'm gonna just try this and see what happens. I need money for school. Here's $50,000 and here you go. Oh, wow. Okay, thanks. And then they kicked you out for wanting to take space. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, I was sitting in the offices of a very big agent at the time at Columbia Artist Management. And she told me I was going to do these roles and this role and this thing. And I was like, I have no idea what this woman is talking about because that is not how I was being trained in this program, you know. And also I just knew that I was like, I don't even know what she's saying. I think I need to at least know what it is that she's saying that I'm going to do, you know, moving forward. And so I just realized that I wasn't ready for the career. And so I went and told the woman who was running the foundation that I did not want to make my Lincoln Center recital debut at Alice Tully Hall, which was the like after the year and a half of being in the program, I was supposed to make my big debut, and I said I didn't want to. I didn't feel ready, and so she kicked me out of my program in New York, sent me packing back to Philadelphia, which thank God wasn't very far. But yeah, but again, it is all a part of my journey, right? How would I know that I wasn't right? Why didn't I just go, okay, you're really doe-eyed and just went along with what they said? Because
that's 18, like 19 even, just especially like losing a parent, you're 19. Like, I don't know how, if I would have been brave enough to quote unquote, let people down in that way, if that makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. I think by that time my mom she hadn't passed away, but she was, you know, very, very sick. So I was really dealing with, I don't know. I'm just like, who is that girl? I need her back. Like sometimes I'm like, I know too much and I need that girl that's like, well, I don't think, you know, but also I think that has also held me back in certain ways too, but later on in the career. But yeah, maybe that was the 19-year-old was like, yeah, I don't know what this lady's saying. And I think I should know a little bit. And yeah, I'm just not going to do that.
Instead, Karen enrolled at Philadelphia's most prestigious music school, the Curtis Institute of Music, from which she graduated in 2002. Coming up is a clip of her performing with fellow Curtis alum and faculty member Michelle Cann. This is Bewilderment by Florence Price with text from Langston Hughes. There are a lot of things to love, appreciate, admire, and just obsess about when it comes to Karen Slack. The creative diversity of her career is probably top 5. When opera houses were shuttered during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, restless artists used the time to experiment. For Karen, this looked like a lot of different projects. On her popular Facebook Live talk show, KikiKonversations, or KikiKonvos for short, Karen invited fellow concert music industry insiders like 5-time Emmy-winning composer Laura Karpman and jazz legend Terrence Blanchard to share their experiences through candid, lively, heartfelt, hilarious, and meaningful conversations. Karen also developed Say Their Names, a virtual song movie presenting songs and readings highlighting the brave, sometimes forgotten women at the forefront of social movements like emancipation, civil rights, and of course, Say Her Name. And the ball has only just started rolling.
I took on a new manager, an additional manager who is able to push these projects that I want to do. I'm starting to speak about the things that I want to do, and I hope Philly Orchestra comes in because I got lots of ideas and lots of things that I want to do that are relevant for the time, that are all the things that check off all of their boxes of all the mission statements that everybody said that they were going to do, but also excellence, high art, an artist who's passionate about pushing more narratives in so that more people can see themselves and not just seeing themselves like, okay, I'm this person, like I check all the boxes for this character. No, the stories are impactful because they're human, right? Human-centered stories, but there is more space to do that kind of work. So I don't know how I got here, but again, it's that kind of like that fearlessness that I have, that kind, that kind of like the truth, right? Always just, if I'm leading from that space, I never feel apologetic about being that person and seeing what the need is and seeing where things are not. I'm very good at that. My friend calls it, you're a great manifestor. I'm like, no, I can assess a space and be able to know what, and maybe that's the gift, to know what needs to be filled. Now it's somebody else's responsibility to support me in that, but I'm always good at knowing when to come, what is missing somewhere. I have that gift. I definitely claim that.
There's been a lot of stuff that you've been doing on your own that are still adjacent to opera and music, but are also your personality. So I kind of wanted to talk about some of those things. Yeah. Firstly, just the fun KikiKonversations, because you were doing those for a while. How did that start about? What was the goal for that for you?
Wow. Well, it was just to have fun. I wanted to take it back to how we are when we're on a gig, not necessarily like interviewing people, just fun. And so I called a couple people, was like, hey, I have this idea. I want to do this thing, this Facebook Live. And people were like, okay, great. I'll do it with you. And then Janae, who's my dear friend, Bridges, and I did the first convos, and everyone was like, oh my God, you are so amazing in that space. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I don't know, but I said, okay. And then Terrence Blanchard, everyone knows Terrence, and his wife, Robin, also manager, was like, we're going next. We're going to go next. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I was like, I'm not even good yet. And they're like, Robin's like, you're amazing. You're great. You're great. And so I just kept cranking them out. And then when George Floyd was murdered on national television, it changed everything because the conversations that I was having privately with my fellow artists, Black artists specifically, we were forced to have in public. I just felt like, I think it was like that the video was on television, and then like combos was supposed to come on like 2 days later. And I'm like, we cannot drink and laugh and kiki and the whole world is imploding. Like, I was just not going to do that. So I just was like, I'm going to go full force into talking about what it's like to be an artist of color, specifically Black. I'm going to be specific with my fellow artists when I have the platform to do that.
Because it also, like, the thing that I think I appreciate so much about you, beyond all the other things I've mentioned, is that it doesn't seem like you're someone that's afraid of trying new things and the truth. like, like, it just seems like, even if it's not necessarily what you're quote unquote supposed to do, like this activism that you started kind of accidentally falling in, I guess, maybe as well, just by having these conversations. What was that like for you? Like, all of a sudden going not just from artists, but also artist, and now I'm speaking for a lot of people, and a lot of people want to hear what I have to say about this specific moment.
You know, at first I was just like, because again, the naivete, like not really knowing, just going in and not having all of the experience, right? Because experience also means baggage. It's all the stuff that has happened to you, all the things. And so I was just going, and like, I don't have any fear because I'm always living in a place of truth. And so I just led with that honesty and truth, because that's my truth. You can't tell me my truth is a lie when it's my truth. That's what I'm living it every day. Like, and so at first it was great. And then the notoriety was great because I was getting the attention of people that may not have had their attention before, or people who were not watching me, or people who didn't really see me in that way, just saw me as a voice, as a soprano, or someone that they didn't hire. Okay, that's a whole other situation of like now having the attention of people who ignored you and want to be on your platform because they
say that part.
Right, because they know that that's the place to be. And combos was and still is, because people still want me to bring combos back. But then what happened was I was realizing that I was starting to take on people's trauma. And every time somebody came into my space, to the space, I didn't realize that I was living with them and breathing with them and kind of like all of the things. And I'm not trained. I wasn't trained in how to be a therapist or a psychologist or anything like that. So one day my husband looked at me. He was like, "You don't look okay." And I'm like, I'm not okay. And it just started to just wear so heavily on me, and I had to pull back.
Well, I want to talk about that too, because I find like, and I use the words racialized, but also still Black, when you are a Black woman, an older Black woman, and you're older in quotes, we're putting that in heavy quotes, but anyone of adult figure, anything like that, even if we joke around about big sis, auntie vibes, whatever, do you, like, I don't know, I struggle with this sometimes too, of like getting dumped into this savior sort of thing of like this Black women can heal people.
Yeah, I was. And I think I was supporting some of that. I was supporting that, and I don't need to support that. Everybody's not worthy. Everybody's not deserving of those things. But of course, that it's that need of wanting to be needed, wanting to feel like you're in that place of service. Because I come definitely from a place of service. But also, yes, what Black women have been saving the world since the beginning of time. We birthed the world. I mean, read your history books. If you don't know, you better find out. You know what I mean? We are the first mothers of the earth. So we carry that in us, but the world doesn't always give it back. So as we are giving and open and, and being needed, it doesn't always feed us in a way and support us in a way that is necessary. So there was a lot of that, but also I'm responsible too for not protecting my own self. So it is in knowing the fact that people are not going to come save you, and knowing the fact that people expect you, because you're a Black woman, to solve all the problems, we still are responsible for our own health.
for putting up those boundaries.
Absolutely, you know, not. I mean, I gained my weight, all the wonderful weight that I had lost, you know, right before the pandemic. Like, gained it back, and like just all of the things, the mental, the physical, the emotional, and we were all going through it together. But once we started talking about the real issues in classical music, it was only the Black artists who could say, well, these things happened to me, this happened to me, this is what's going on, the microaggressions to speak. Well, we were the only ones doing it. And then after we all bled and died on the front line, other communities who are marginalized started maybe speaking, but we had already been doing all the bloody work. I'm sorry. Like, if someone's offended by that, then you're not tuned in.
Well, apart from opera, it's also a thing of history. There's a lot of history, or not a lot of history, I shouldn't say this, but I'm thinking of recent history. Even when the civil rights movement started, it gave permission for a lot of other movements, the women's liberation movement, like all of these different movements coming after it, because it's like, hey, there's one group that's saying, I don't have to stand for this. I'm going to say what I need to say. And unfortunately, a lot of times, if you've got a lot more melanin on this earth, the darker you are, the more you're like tasked with doing that. So I wanted to ask you, actually, we talk a lot about self-care on the online spaces. We talk a lot about hashtag self-care.
Yes.
I wanted to know, how are you caring for yourself now, especially after realizing all of those things that were when your husband looked at you and said, I don't know, how are you caring for yourself now? How much more intentional are you with it?
I'm saying no more and not being like nervous, like I'm going to lose something if I say no. I'm always open to suggestions. You know, my husband says I don't take care of myself enough. Like, oh, you don't go and like do the things that you need to do in order to make yourself feel better, because you're always so worried about other people. Making sure you stay and do one extra panel, right? Making sure you do one extra email, 2 extra email, whatever that is. And so I'm learning that it can wait. It can wait. And so for me, that's the self-care thing, is that I've been learning to stop at 6:00, not necessarily the practice part, but the administrative part, like clocking out at a certain time, not responding to everything that comes my way. Like, it's okay for people to wait a couple days. Like, it really is okay. I'm not very good at getting massages and all those things to self-care. So you're burning candles, you know what I mean? Doing the things that make me feel good. I don't have a hobby. Like, what's a hobby? Everything that I do is centered around music or opera, or, you know, that multiple streams of income coming from the one thing is like a real thing for me. So I'm trying to learn how to take care of myself better.
I mean, listen, we're all learning self-care, so it's a work in progress. But I appreciate that you're saying it's a process and that you're still figuring it out, because a lot of people are, especially if you're an artist, I think you're kind of in that mindset of your brain is always going.
Yes.
So it's hard to turn it off.
Yeah, it's always in process.
It was honestly so much fun talking to Karen. If you couldn't tell, we really like to yuck it up together. So I hope y'all had as much fun listening to this as I did talking with her. If you'd like to hear even more from Karen, check out our episode bonus, where I'll be asking her a handful of light questions like, what song do you wish you'd written? And what's your cataclysm sentence? Tune in to find out what that means. Until next month, I'm Khadija Mbowe, and this has been the Here Together podcast from the Philadelphia Orchestra and Kimmel Center, Inc. As we close, I hope you'll enjoy a bit of Karen Slack performing Taking Names, composed by Jasmine Barnes, the core piece of the Say Their Names Women Project.